Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name's Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. We're out of the Waisman Center at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We cover 14 counties in southern and southwest Wisconsin, and we are here to help meet the needs of families who have children with disabilities or special health care needs, the providers who support them. Basically, we want people to get to know each other and get the system to work a little bit better. And part of the way we do that is we introduce some key people that are throughout our area. And I am so excited because I get to work with a fantastic group of people at the Waisman Center. And one of the people that possibly one of the first people I met when I started working here is Dr. Leann Dawalt Smith Dawalt, and I just get them totally mixed up. So sorry about that. So we're going to drop one of your names and we're just going to call you Leann. So we'll drop two of your names. But Leann is here today as a researcher. She is more than that. She's also the director of the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, also called the UCED. And we can talk a little bit more about that if we feel like it. But you know what? I really want you guys to get a chance to meet Leann. So Leann, thanks so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. This is going to be fun. I'm excited to join.
Awesome. So tell us first a little bit about yourself. So what are you researching currently? And how the heck did you get started in research? I mean, I know very few people who, when they're in first grade, and they draw the pictures of their profession, of what they want to be when they grow up. I have yet to see anybody draw a researcher. So how did you get involved in this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So when I was a kid, if I were to draw a picture, I wanted to be a mom because I thought my mom was great. And then I wanted to be a teacher because my mom was a teacher. So you can see a little theme there. But I would even say the roots of wanting to be a researcher were there in childhood, and that I loved learning. So I loved going to school. I loved being with people. And that I think sort of joy of connecting with people and sort of a natural curiosity is something that makes for ultimately a good researcher when you become an adult. So yeah, I did not know the word researcher or draw researcher, but I definitely have always loved learning and asking questions, and in particular asking questions and doing learning that would help people, and specifically people with disabilities, developmental differences, and so that's what my career has been focused on. But I will say what first got me started was not research. So the research I do today is focused on adolescents and adults on the autism spectrum, adolescents and adults with Fragile X syndrome, different developmental disabilities, and how those teenagers become young adults, and those young adults become middle-aged adults and older adults, and how families and communities are part of that journey with the autistic adult or with a person with a disability. And so that's what my research focuses on now. But what where I started the journey was actually getting to know people with disabilities. So not as a researcher.
And different people take different routes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, in high school, I grew up, our youth group would go to what we now would call a community living situation, and we would be paired with these adults, and we'd go swimming and we'd play games. And that was like my first exposure, because growing up, you know, I went to school in the late 60s, early 70s. It was nothing like it is today. And so that was like my first exposure. So how were you introduced to this wonderful world?
Yeah, well, I will actually say cheers for inclusion, because my first experience of getting to know and befriend people with disabilities was actually in elementary school, when there was inclusion happening in my classroom in the 80s. So that, you know, it's the first step. But in college, I had two different experiences. One was I was in, I don't know if you've heard of, I don't know if they have it in Wisconsin, Best Buddies, where you pair college students with adults with primarily intellectual disability. And my buddy was an autistic adult, and I just would hang out with him all the time. And he was a runner and I was a runner, and so we just would be outside, and it was great. He didn't say much, but we really got to know each other, and I got to know his family. And I also had the opportunity to be a in-home therapy provider, like originally with just one family, but then others of a child on the autism spectrum, and working with that family. And that was just so foundational for me. And what made me really want to think about how to help the whole family and not just the person. Because so in both of those experiences, that studies and then being a therapy provider, like those were cases where the whole family was like really rallying, and but I could see sort of the toll that level of energy could also take, and that it wasn't just in my mind, my developing philosophy, as a 19-year-old was, oh wow, we need to be, and now we would use the word like family centered. I didn't have that language at the time, but that was sort of my curiosity and what was really driving me at that stage.
So when you mention you're studying more the not just the individual, but the individual in context of the family, and you're studying those family structures and family supports, can you just explain a little bit more about that, how that differentiates? Because we're used to a lot of research being, okay, we look at traits in this person, this person, this person. We try to draw conclusions across the board from looking at all these individuals. But you're talking this complex unit of whatever somebody considers their family. How do you do research on something as complex as family?
Yeah, carefully and with humility, which I think is really important, because sort of what you're saying, family is complex and sticky, and who you even consider your family at times, right, can change, especially when we think about adults with disabilities, and they may acquire people that become very close and meaningful to them and part of their support network. And so our research, we use different strategies. One main way, I think, which sounds pretty simple, but it's just to listen to the different voices within the family system. And to take time. So we spend a lot of time doing interviews to really listen to what's the mom's perspective, what's the grandmother's perspective, when possible to talk to a sibling. And in addition to the person with the disability, and try to understand what they think is important about their loved one, for us to know, and also what they think is most helpful. So we're thinking about, let's say, transition. What are the things that really have helped? And when you talk to multiple family members, you get a richer understanding of how sort of this journey with disability is affecting everyone. There are other research methods of, in addition to interviewing, that some researchers do. They'll go and they'll hang out in a house with the family, just get to know them in that context and observe sort of the rhythms of life. We've done studies that are called daily diary studies, which are pretty cool, because you basically have someone report everything they did during the day in a structured way. So how many hours were they working on chores around the house? How many hours were they at work or at school? How many hours were they doing leisure, things they really wanted to do? How stressed did they feel in different situations across the day? How many interactions did they have with people they enjoyed? And so really probing different ways. And so that's a fun way to get a sense of, so often we talk about these sweeping, grand, like, but really on a really day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis, what does life look like for folks who have a loved one with a disability or an autistic child? And we find that their daily lives can look really different than people that have neurotypical children. So that's one of the ways we try to understand the family experience.
So how long have you been doing research now?
Well, let's see. I started here at the Wasteman Center 16 years ago. And before at the Wasteman Center, I was a graduate student in Indiana. So 20 years now
Wow.
in total. And I am not bored yet.
Not looking to move on to anything
No.
else at this point. So over these 16 years, have there been surprises in the studies? Because I know a lot of time, going back to my own, my own days, there used to be this thing called a hypothesis.
Yeah.
And you would say, okay, I think I'm going to find this out. Have you ever had, I'm going to find this out, and then you get into the research and you're like, well, that was the wrong question, or definitely not the answer I was looking for, or just what interesting stuff have you found?
Yeah, well, I would say that one of the fun things, and maybe why I'm not bored yet, is that actually happens a lot. Where, and maybe it's not that like you were completely wrong and off base, but that sort of there was nuance and sort of outliers or sort of unique cases that you weren't anticipating. But I would say one of the things I was most intrigued by, and this was a few years ago, we did a study looking in a sample of autistic adults, following them over time. And sometimes sort of conventional wisdom would say that if you want someone to be employed, let's make sure they are employable. So let's work on getting them job skills. Let's work on making sure they're not going to have sort of behaviors that are going to bother people.
There's a whole industry around that, Leann. I mean, that's a whole thing.
Yeah. So this is sort of conventional wisdom, and I am not against training or education or any of that, and supporting people's behavior in a positive way. All of that I am supportive. So we did a study looking at overtime for many years, and looking at behavior and adaptive skills, so like sort of self-help skills, and then looking at the level of engagement and vocational activities and their sort of community-based vocational activities or employment. And you would think, at least on conventional wisdom, is that having more skills and sort of fewer behavioral difficulties, you're going to be on this trajectory to really move up in employment and, be increasingly more independent in your vocational life. And what we found was actually the opposite driver. So it was being placed in a community setting where you were experiencing employment that triggered growth and those adaptive behaviors and reductions actually in behavioral difficulties. And so it's not as if we don't want to teach skills or we don't want to provide positive behavior support, but it did seem that having sort of those employment opportunities, people are able to capitalize on them in terms of their own growth and development. And so I thought that was really exciting, because you could almost think of like the opportunity to work as its own type of intervention. And I think that also reflects some of our own bias in that for neurotypical people, for most people, having a job does drive us, hopefully, to become more skilled in this better version of ourselves, and we gain in professionalism. And why would we think that would be different for a person with a disability, right?
Well, it also strikes me that, and I don't. So this is where conversations go off the rails sometimes with me. Okay. Because I'm sitting there thinking about what you previously said about families, and that we have to look at this person in context. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm hearing is that it's not just what this individual can learn how to do, but it's also the fact that they're placed within a context where they are supportive and they have the ability to learn. And darn it all, isn't that the best environments for all of us to maximize our skills and to grow and to feel comfortable, is if we're in that supportive environment. But a lot of times we are so focused on that individual level of growth and individual level of success, that we forget the effect of that group that is around us, whether that's our family or our work group that's around us, and how vital they are to us growing and us succeeding. Does that fit in with what you're saying?
Absolutely. And when we think about, and I say this, some of our research is focused on education and support for families and for youth. And so I'll talk a lot about families is when we can keep our home environment, like our little nest, our place where we all can keep our stress low. So it's not surprising we would be stressed and that sort of the tension and emotion would get high. It gets high in all families and all homes, right? But when we can work together to kind of pull down that emotional intensity, it's good for every family member, right? So it's better for the parent, it's better for a sibling, it's better for the autistic youth, right? And especially if you have a developmental difference, some of the environments you go out into the world into aren't supportive.
Right.
And so how much more to have that home environment be the place where that intensity is low, we can exhale.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so I do want to announce that we do have some people that have joined us, and I would welcome you guys to either, I can see you unmute. Also, if you're not feeling like unmuting and talking today, perfectly okay. Believe it or not, there are days where I don't feel like talking either. But please feel free to.
Tim doesn't feel like talking.
Yeah, I know. I can't. I'm trying. Nope. Maybe when anyway. But you can also put your questions into the chat as well, and I'll be more than happy to repeat them. So you talked to us about this not unanticipated, but this extra finding that you found around employment. Is there any like big takeaways? You've been doing this for a while. Is there any way that you can coalesce what some of the important points that you've learned that you would want other people to know about this family system and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Yeah. So one of the things, and I didn't talk about it because it was consistent with I already was hypothesizing or believing, which is, and again, these things sound so simplistic to say, but it's exciting to have research and data to back it up, is that the family really matters. So the kind of like similar to my observations as a 19-year-old, that families do so much for their loved ones and are really pivotal in ensuring access to services and creating sort of these home environments and contexts where people feel supported and accepted, and and families do that all the time. So not just when children are really young and maybe going through that diagnostic journey and figuring out sort of what the special needs might be and how to address them, but at all sort of the stages of life and as individuals age, parents may step back in some of their, but a sibling or another loved one often will step in to be that supporter and champion. And so it wasn't unexpected to me because I had a belief that like family mattered. And I think what's important, I like to say sort of myth busting, particularly for the autism community, that there, in particular, that there has been some history of sort of negativity towards parents or judgment and sort of stigmatizing. And the research doesn't hold up any of those stereotypes or judgments. It's the opposite, that the level of warmth and consistency is just as strong as parents who don't have a child on the spectrum. And then you think about sort of just some of the differences in interaction style, really the sophistication of so many parents of autistic children in their ability to offer that warmth and support and guidance. And so like I really did, like I believed that was true, and then seeing it and sort of study after study over time, and not just research happening here in Wisconsin, but in other states, right? Sort of this value of families and to push back about with these myths and stigmatizing narratives that can come up sometimes in some sort of this history, erroneous, false history about sort of the origins of disability. So
I know you also have a special focus. I don't know if it's a special but at least a focus on transition.
yes,
And
yes,
that
I do have a special interest, lots of special interest.
lots of special interest of these adolescents, young adults growing up and turning 18 and becoming these adults. I was just somewhere talking with some other families, and they were expressing how, as a family member, this time is so stressful for the family, not just for that youth, young adult with disabilities. And one of the family members mentioned that it seems to be this is just one of the times where their own mortality just comes at them, is that as their child turns 18, the parents are thinking about, oh my gosh, they're going to be an adult and eventually they're going to be here and I'm not.
Right.
And so you have that whole equation coming into the family members. You have this worry about, how
Are they
much
going to be
art.
okay? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And what are they going to do?
Every parent has with their child, but as a parent, we spent years trying to support and build up and form these teams, and it almost feels like you're not really sure what you're going to do because you've had a certain role for 18 years and now that role's changing. Have you learned how to help us navigate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I will say sometimes in research, we just observe and validate what, what families are feeling. So we've observed this and can validate that this is very real. And then when people have these feelings, they are not alone. And I think that it is very hard for parents because the shift from adolescence to adulthood has some of these more philosophical, pieces, but also a really big shift in services and who your partners are going to be. And the way that the world works with you changes drastically. So some of the research we've done shows that there absolutely is a service cliff after high school exit. That for some youth, the service cliff actually starts before they even get to the cliff. So that some services start to fall off even during high school, which was a little surprising to us. We thought it would be this sharp, but it's almost like the senior slide starts happening in terms of service access even before the cliff for some youth. And the way that individuals are going to be able to receive services in adulthood is different. So before, parents can hit the ground advocating and organizing, and that will be effective for ensuring that the services that are needed are the ones that are received. And part of what we've done in our research is help to educate parents that once that 18 shift happens, it has to be the voice of the youth coming to the table, and that's the voice that sort of the adult providers, especially around vocational services and that sort of thing. The youth is going to have to be part of that conversation, and so the parent has to shift from being the primary advocate to being the supporter of the emerging advocate, the developing advocate, the youth. And so in some of our different research studies around transition interventions for families, it's helping parents recognize that that is going to happen, to know about it, and then to start adjust some of their approach. But it's hard because some of the strategies you've had before are not going to work anymore. If you're wanting your youth to have some post-secondary college type experience, you can't barge into the lecture hall yourself.
It's frowned upon. There really is no bring your parent to class day just doesn't, it's not there.
And that the youth have to request the ADA accommodations, whereas the IEP is this entitlement, and the school has to find you, right? No college has to find you if you need help.
No, they don't. Yeah, they're I don't want to say they're not interested in you because, well, they should be very interested and fiscally tied to your success. But yes, You have to learn to take those steps for yourself, which goes back to that whole, trying to help adolescents build those self-help skills, the speaking up for yourself. The one that I think about with my son is the whole, look, if you don't understand something, stop trying to fake that you do. I understand why you do that, because we all do that.
Right.
Get it. But say, I really don't. Feel free, ask those questions. I really don't understand what you want from me. I don't understand what the assignment is. I don't understand how to stick the rotisserie chicken. I know you showed me, I'll get it. Being able to admit that, but that's a huge step, because it's admitting that I don't understand something. And that's hard for all of us, much less, some of our youth.
And that's one of the things I think parents and other family members can also have a role in doing, some modeling, like being open when we have our own emotions, being open when we have our own uncertainties and insecurities, to articulate, like say out loud some of the things we might have in our head around, oh, I need to figure this, I don't actually understand, I need to figure, like to say that out loud as a parent, to model and to normalize, to make it okay to have questions and to not be perfect and to kind of stumble through. And a lot of the work we do, particularly with young adults, there's a lot of discussion of all the mistakes we all make, right? And like, oh, like the time I almost burned my college dorm down by setting a fire in the microwave. It happens.
It happens.
Right? And that's why you need to have a good roommate, and you need to know who your RA is, and you but the more we can be open and talk about these things, then it isn't like a disability issue. It's a learning, it's a maturing, it's a growth issue. That we all go through. And that people with developmental differences may need more time and more practice.
And gosh darn it all, I can look back on my own life and say, how many times I might have caught something better if people had used less words and talked slower and given me time to respond. Well, that probably would have been really, really helpful to me. Well, guess what? That's also really helpful to my son. And he lets me know. It's like, Dad, that's just too many words. Just, yeah. Got that from my neurotypical and my non-neurotypical child. Go figure. I know, surprise, everybody, just, ooh, surprise. But that's, it goes, we talk a lot about universal design, and if it works for everybody, it's going to work for everybody. And so let's design these things to work for everybody. And it seems to me right now, the transition and a certain amount of the adult world is not ready, is not working for our adolescent young adults and our adults who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, which then goes back to exactly what you're studying, that need to continue to have that supportive circle around each individual.
And I wanted to go, and we can see what other people want to say. I wanted to go back to something you were kind of touching on that I also think is important to recognize. So I'm glad you raised it, that we do see as well, is this sort of that anxiety and worry and what will happen when I die, these sort of feelings and questions that family members might have. Youth with disabilities also have those anxieties and worries, and they may not be able to articulate them particularly well, right? But this, because sometimes, especially if there's pretty concrete thinking, that this thought that I'm going to turn 18 and I won't have my parents anymore. And so sometimes there needs to be some, like, recommitment that we are still going to be a family, even when we turn 18, we're still
right.
We're still there for each other. But I think it's important to not sort of poo-poo or brush aside any of those anxieties, because in a lot of cases they can be justified, right? The world is not fair.
No.
Like, the world actually is full of discrimination and injustice and like challenge that isn't right, and that your child that you love so much that you're releasing into this world may be in situations that they will be at risk. And so you have to decide as a family how to balance that, to sort of think through making sure you're offering these opportunities, like for, to be engaged, to have things that are meaningful activities. But that's part of sort of this development process for a parent, right? It's like releasing a little bit. But I guess I just want to make sure it's, I'm not trying to minimize those anxieties, because it's not as if the world is perfect or that universal design exists yet.
True. I'm reminded of this almost every day. So we do have some other people very interested, and we've covered a wide range of topics, very interested on what your thoughts may be, reactions. It doesn't necessarily have to be questions for Leann, but just any thoughts that you have out there about the role of the family, the role in these supportive systems in our children's lives, or the people's lives that we work with. Any thoughts, any comments?
And I have another thought, Tim, but I will wait to see what others want to say.
I have a thought. I mean, thank you for sharing all of that. I really appreciate it. I'm a CLTS case manager here in Dane County. And so I just would like to say, I know you have the research to back it, but I feel like I have all the personal experience to back it on how important our families are to these kids, but also how hard that transition is into the adult world. Like, I have a couple kids that I need to refer to, the teens, they're not kids, to the ADRC in the next couple months. And one of them probably won't qualify because you have to have a very strict disability to qualify for that. And even if you do qualify for it, it's kind of like drive-by case management, where they have hundreds of kids on their caseload or adults at that point. And it's not really the same connection that I get to make with my families. But like, here I am in the children's system, like I talk to my families maybe too much for some of them, but like I help them with a wide range of things that are not all CLTS related, but like they just don't know what is available to them. And so I think all of the research you're doing to like really back up all of the work that I'm doing is just hugely beneficial to just show just how important the children's system is, but also that transition and having those people that are like not living in the world, but like working in the world to help with that, because like it's overwhelming for these families. Like the amount of times my families are like, just like, stop, like I can't do it anymore, because there's just so much and they don't know about all of it. But I just really appreciate all of the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just love your observation about, the support your families need in the children's program, and that I know families get less as kids age, but I don't think that it means that they need less support. I think that that's a false sort of assumption that somehow it's like less complicated, that or that that families shouldn't or can't or don't want to be involved is not the case. And if they aren't, maybe because they need even more support, right? That they have their own aging and so yeah. So I think it's interesting that our systems are designed to be very family centered very early on, and then it sort of just dissipates with age, and like that can make sense, except when you're sort of on the ground, like you're describing, seeing the need.
Yeah, and it makes sense in one way of the developing brain, and being able to think through more and all that. But there's also this whole, everything gets so much more fuzzy, and it gets so much more dependent on if this, then this. And well, maybe there's so many more maybes in the adult world than there are in before the adult world, and going through.
There are more decisions, and like they need to be supported. This is what supported decision making is, right? And that's where I think like we should have systems that support people to support those decisions.
Yes. That's, we could just, let's all just take a week off and we can learn how to support each other, and, hopefully somebody will pay us for it. But there is that skill as an adult to support a young adult, support a middle-aged adult. It's so much different than supporting a child. It's a little bit more nuanced, I think.
Well, and it's a dance because there is, autonomy in a way that, a 2-year-old, you can just, not that we're not respecting them, but, there's a little bit different than how you can, structure the day in life. But when you have an adult, like it's a partnership and a dance, and, there's mutual respect. And so it is, just like a marriage or like it's complicated.
And starting to practice that dancing skill early on
Mhm.
with your child is really, really important, so that they're not surprised at 18 when all of a sudden you just turn to them for the first time in their entire life and say, well, what do you think? And they've never been asked that question before. It's going to be a very frightening moment and probably not going to go very well. Tracy?
So thank you. This is very timely for us as we're working through transition. It's coming up very quickly, and we have about 1.5 years left. And so I have a hard time with my son even getting him to, like, hey, what do you think about this? I don't know. And he's done. So I'm wondering what this transition is going to look like for us and for him, taking part in that. So it's a very scary time. And, and I think Liz for, joining us as a CLTS worker, because I got to say our CLTS worker has been fabulous too here in Waukesha County, and just to be able to come to IEP meetings and, really be an advocate for us and our families. So, what is that going to look in the future for my son? And I want him to do the things that my girls are doing, and, being independent and going to college, or if he doesn't go to college, have a job or a skill or something that he likes. But I feel like we don't have enough time to explore that because we're just kind of figuring out and using autism as an excuse, like, well, I can't do that because I have autism. Well, let's try again. Yes, you can. Let's find a different way. So, I don't know, but I do appreciate this conversation because it is a scary time, and I am like scared to death of what life is going to look like. Do we need guardianship? Do we need supported guardianship? Is he even able to do supported guardianship? I know he can make the decisions, but I don't know that he's ready. Like, I would love him to be able to take it and go. But there's a lot of things that he needs handholding on still too, where he asks for help. And is that part of me, as a parent, like saying, well, you're not ready, or when he's not doing it, then I just do it because it's just easier to do it, or how long do I wait? So it's a kind of like you said, it's a dance to figure out what the best way is and how to really push for that independence.
And one of the things I think that's important to remember and to give yourself a little space and grace is that transition absolutely is a process. And so it's not like a one day now we've transitioned, and independence is something that develops over a really long period of time. So in our research on youth on the autism spectrum, there are these gains in independence that happen in adolescence, but they continue sort of into the 20s having more skills. And so like where someone is today, like you said, you have 1.5 years, well, where he is today isn't going to be, like that 1.5 years. And, tomorrow might be a high day or a low day. And so it's going to sort of even itself out. But yeah, I think that you're asking all the right questions of yourself, which I think is really, so that's why I sort of saying, give yourself a lot of credit here that you're thinking about these things and doing that introspection of, where could he be? And my guess is he's going to keep making these gains, especially with you right there, asking yourself those questions too, right? And he, it may be that, I have seen a lot of autistic youth that like talking about the future or talking about what you want to do, like that's really anxiety provoking. And so it like, even just like being willing to think about it just a little bit is a big step, and to celebrate that, right? So that, because if there's some sort of fear of failure or that sort of thing, it can be, these are really, could be really big conversations, which is why, taking advantage of sort of that as much time as you have, I think can be really helpful. Yeah. So this seems like it was the talk for you today.
Well,
Yes, thank you.
and we are approaching the end of our time here. But of course, there's a burning question that I have, Leann, and that is, so was there anything at all exciting or good about growing up in Indiana?
Well, I didn't grow up in Indiana, so
Oh,
that is
thank
what.
Goodness, 'cause I think everybody in Indiana is probably bored. I drive through there. I don't understand it.
Well, I drove through there a lot because I went to graduate school there, and so I drove through to get to Tennessee, which is where I'm actually from originally. Yeah,
So have you worked on losing an accent? Did you grow up with this?
I did have an accent. I don't have it anymore. I didn't work to lose it. It just happened by time and peer pressure, I guess.
Never go back and find yourself falling into it?
I will definitely still say y'all.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in West Virginia for 9 months and I started to say y'all
Y'all is really a helpful
all
word.
the time.
Yeah, all y'all.
Oh, yeah. Yes, exactly, which is getting to be more okay.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Exactly. And it's gender neutral. So
Yeah.
I find it very effective instead of, come on, guys, come on, y'all. So
All y'all.
trying to use all y'all and y'all a little bit more often. Well, Leann, thank you so much. And thank you for the people that were able to join us live today. We will post this recording, and just thank you so very much, Leann, for coming and sharing how you got involved in research, what you're learning, sharing with us what you're learning, and just for the work that you are doing with the families, and knowing that none of us exist on an island, is we all need those people around us.
We all need each other.
We all need y'all.
Yeah, all y'all.
All y'all come together. We just need to come together. So thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank